Welcome to Season 9 of Talking ELT, where we're diving into one of the most important topics shaping classrooms today, Generation Alpha. This 4-part series explores how this unique generation of learners, born into a world of digital immersion and rapid change, is transforming the way we teach, connect and assess in education.
We cannot teach for a world that doesn't exist.
They have this entrepreneurial mindset, collaborative mindset, so working with others to achieve a shared goal.
From their unique traits, challenges and super strengths to their evolving social skills and the impact of technology and AI on education, Generation Alpha is redefining what it means to learn and what it means to teach.
It's all linked to being highly emotionally intelligent. They're adapting to fast, high stimulating information.
Through insights from our expert guests, Dr. Erica Galea and Olga Sayer, authors of the recently published book Generation Alpha in the Classroom, New Approaches to Learning, the series delves into the neuroscience behind Gen Alpha's learning behaviours, their social and emotional development, and practical strategies for engagement, motivation, and classroom connection.
What's fascinating is that they almost don't need someone to give them information. They're actually hardwired to acquire information naturally.
Together, Erica and Olga bring a powerful blend of neuroscience and classroom experience to this fascinating conversation. In this first episode, we explore who Generation Alpha are, what makes them different from previous generations, and how their brains and behaviours are shaped by the world they're growing up in. Let's jump in. Welcome, Erica and Olga. Really nice to have you here. How are you?
I'm fine.
You good?
Thank you for having us here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for coming over. Before we get into this topic, what I want to do is for people to get a better sense of who you are. But can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got there to what you're doing? Erica, should we start with you?
So I started off as a primary school teacher. Mm-hmm. So I spent 10 years teaching in a primary school, but at the same time I taught English in an English language school as well for another 10 years. Then I went on to being deputy head in a school and then on to headship. However, 3 years ago, I finalized my doctorate in the science of teaching and learning, education and neuroscience, and decided to start off my own company business. So I'm the founder and director of the English of the Education and Neuroscience Hub, to create awareness on the science of teaching and learning on a national basis in Malta and also Gozo, which is our sister island. And I'm collaborating with the Ministry for Education at the moment to create awareness on this, since it's part of our national strategy now.
Wow.
I'm also a visiting lecturer at the University of Malta, where I train prospective teachers in education and neuroscience. And I also have international and national projects going on, also starting training on an international basis as well.
Wow, so you're busy.
Yes, very, very busy.
Fantastic, sounds amazing. And Olga, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, Ben, thank you for having me today. Yes, I've been teaching almost all my professional life. I trained as a teacher in Moscow, actually. I spent a couple of years teaching very young children in the nursery school. And I then moved on to teaching adults, teenagers, and I pretty much have some experience teaching all sorts of learners and cohorts, which was pretty much traditional, I would say. Then I trained, it was training in a more communicative approach. And from there, I took on digital learning design and kind of got interested in digital learning experiences rather than, face-to-face classrooms. And also, I've trained as a counsellor as well. So counselling is also, supports teaching, I think. Understanding human behaviours, understanding how we learn through communication, interaction with others. So it's been my pretty much area of interest.
Fantastic. I think you're also an author as well.
Yes, well, me and Erica co-authored the book on teaching Generation Alpha, which is pretty fascinating.
Right.
It's a huge milestone we've reached, Olga.
And so, talking about Generation Alpha, can you tell me what first got you interested in this topic?
So, yes, as parents, as mothers.
Yes, in the first place.
Yes, that's number one.
Right.
We started seeing the different ways that our children process information and learn. For example, recently we just had in Malta our final examination, so I was observing also how my daughter studies so differently to how I studied when I was younger, her age. Using AI to prepare exam questions, for example, on the content that she has to study. And even the way they process and study, typing out notes instead of writing,
Yes.
Yeah, well, my interest pretty much been similar to Erica's. As a mum, I have 2 kids, and I can see how differently they process information, how differently they approach learning, and how different that process and their experiences are from, say, not just me and slightly older people than them. So it's pretty much fascinating. When we talk about Generation Alpha, we talk about children and learners born from 2010 to 2024. So it's now moved on to Generation Beta, I think.
Right.
So the oldest will be about 15 now.
And even during my workshops that I deliver in Malta, teachers were coming up to me and saying, but we cannot reach out to these students, We've noticed a change in the way they learn, in their behaviour, in their emotion regulation as well.
Right.
So they were asking for tips. And then we said, okay, this is a good reason, another good reason as to why, we could research on Generation Alpha and how they learn.
Yes. It's interesting. One of the things I find fascinating about that is that way that if you're a parent and a teacher, it gives you an added dimension to this. I always find this in the staff room. If you've got teachers who are also parents of children at the school, it gives you a very different perspective on what's happening, because you really see the learning from 2 points of view, what happens in the classroom and what's actually happening at home. So I always think that's really interesting, that dual perspective. So as you started to say, that was going to be my first question. If people ask, well, what actually is Generation Alpha? What's the answer to that?
That's the question people ask when I tell them about the book. Say, who are Generation Alpha? Well, they are young learners. They are learners born from 2010. I always struggle pronouncing that. 2010, 2010, up to 2014. Okay. So it's pretty much
2024.
2024.
Yeah. So they are all the children in primary school. And children in middle school, and up
14,
to
15 downwards.
Yeah.
So that's Generation Alpha for you.
Right. So kind of up to high school at the moment. Yeah. Okay.
And it's the way, they process information.
Yes.
Because they were immersed in a world of, born into a world of modern technologies.
Yes.
And a high flow of, information. Their brains are wired differently to ours.
Yes.
So they process information differently.
Yes.
And this is why it's important for educators to adapt. And in fact, Olga and I are not here to reinvent the wheel, but teachers have their own strategies they've been trialing and testing for a very long time. within the classroom. We're just here to sort of either confirm whether they're on the right track or not, or to give new ways, innovative ways of trying to reach out to this generation as a way to adapt, to make the learning and teaching and learning more effective.
Right. Okay, but now I want to just go back a little bit, and I'm thinking particularly from that neurological point of view. When we're talking about, people say Gen Alpha's brains are different in some way, and you kind of hinted at that. Could you give us a bit more detail on what you mean by that?
So I'm going to start off with a quote from McCrindle, who did a lot of research on Generation Alpha too, besides us. And it goes, Generation Alpha, the most materially endowed and technologically literate and formally educated generation ever. And I always tell educators, we cannot teach for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Our world doesn't exist anymore. It's past and it's gone. Although there are some traditional teaching methods which still count for today's generation, but we need to also adapt, as we mentioned before. And why? Because they're digitally rewired due to the fast pace and overstimulation of information as well. They have heightened neuroplasticity. Their constant neuroplasticity is the rewiring of the brain, the neural connections made due to repetitive behaviour. So if these Generation Alpha are constantly swiping and looking at reels and TikTok videos, they're adapting to fast, high stimulating information. They're also dopamine-driven motivation, so they have dopamine-driven motivation. They tend to be motivated because of the dopamine hits due to technology.
Can you just clarify what that means?
So dopamine is the brain chemical, the neurotransmitter that makes you motivated, the feel-good factor that makes you motivated to keep moving forward, to keep working hard. And when
for an expected benefit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Generation Alpha, due to the exposure of technology, get these dopamine hits. It's similar to what we feel when we upload a post on any social media and we get those likes or we get that comment, we get a dopamine hit.
Yes.
But these students are getting it all the time with their either social media or technology.
Yes.
And one thing that educators need to understand too is that when they're at home gaming, these students reach a high threshold of dopamine level. So when they come into school and they don't reach that same threshold of dopamine level, then they feel bored because they're not getting that dopamine hit that they're getting through their technology. So this is why educators need to make their lessons very much engaging to get that those dopamine hits within the classroom.
Right.
So now teaching has become more demanding and more exhausting because we're competing with this dopamine.
Yes. So I know we're going to come later to ways that we can actually, teachers can make their lessons more engaging for students. But you mentioned also something about that combination of visual and audio stimuli. And is that something which is changing as well?
They're very high in visual spatial skills.
Right.
For example, one of the games that's a very popular game is Minecraft. There you have the visual spatial skills that are coming out, even auditory now.
Right.
You know, visual and auditory is something that they are two skills that they're using through their technology. So they are adapting to visual and auditory skills.
Hi, I'm Olga Seya. If you want to explore the topic of Generation Alpha in the classroom in more depth, you can now get your hands on the book Dr. Erica Galea and I co-authored. We dive into the unique challenges this generation faces and their exceptional strengths. It's all about helping teachers understand and connect with Gen Alpha learners more effectively. And we've packed it with neuroscientific insights and practical strategies you can use right away in your classroom. We hope you enjoy it and find it as inspiring to read as it was to write. See the link in the description for more information.
Right. So that's really useful. Thank you for that. And sometimes, perhaps as teachers, we're struggling with these students. So it would be good to hear some of the positive traits. You know, if you were thinking about Generation Alpha students, what are the positive things you would say about those students?
Well, again, when we talk about Generation Alpha students in the classroom, you might notice that, of course, you know, there are challenges, but there's lots and lots of strengths that the students possess. One of them is independence and this sort of self-driven learning. And for these students, the digital and real doesn't actually, there's no difference between the digital experience and the real experience.
Yes.
So what's fascinating is that they almost don't need someone to give them information. They're actually hardwired to acquire information naturally. So when I notice that in my children, for example, when they don't know something, what they do, they don't ask me, they just go and find it on YouTube. So YouTube is used for educational purposes, for, you know, like, how do you create this thing in Roblox? How do you do this and that and the other? So there is a unique situation where they almost like coach each other. The children of the same age learn from each other, which is a fascinating thing. It's a natural thing for them. Yes. So another thing is that they are, because they're so immersed in their digital experiences, which requires a lot of interaction, exchange with others. So we could see that they have this entrepreneurial mindset, collaborative mindset, so working with others to achieve a shared goal. Lots of games are built like that. So when you have to exchange, like you grow a farm together, you gift rare items to each other, or you request and you know, solve tasks collaboratively as a tribe, as a team. So teamwork is actually quite a strong, I believe, is a strong trait of this.
And that entrepreneurial side is a kind of openness to doing things differently, innovation and things like that.
Yeah, they're pretty much open to innovation. It's linked to the cognitive flexibility, which we talk about in the book. Yeah. It's an ability to continuously learn, relearn, adapt to the changing circumstances. So it's one of the strengths as well. And you can see the direct link to the language teaching, for example. The students respond quite well to, with less stress, to changing circumstances in games that require this cognitive flexibility, where you have to define, redefine, adapt, change your you know, point of view.
And due to all this that Olga mentions, it's all linked to being highly emotionally intelligent then, because of cognitive flexibility. Then they tend to adapt themselves to regulating their emotions because of the adaptability and flexibility. Right.
So it's interesting because those, as you know, those are positive things, and you can see how teachers might make use of those. But I can also see how they can be challenging as well.
Exactly.
In the past, you know, the teacher was the source of information. So the students came to the teacher, but actually now they're used to finding the information themselves.
I totally agree with you. I think the biggest challenge for teachers is to redefine their identity and redefine their role in that classroom, because I think teachers aren't, like myself, for example, it was even pre-COVID. I'm not even talking about Generation Alpha. It actually started long before that. Is this growing feeling of kind of lagging behind a little bit technologically, thinking, what is going on? Why are my students so independent they almost don't need me anymore to acquire the skills and the language, because they can simply find it all online. So I'm not the source of information anymore, not the source of knowledge. And I can see how teachers might feel anxious or, you know, question their role. And on the other hand, whilst understanding that is tricky, is definitely tricky, for teachers, it's quite a conservative profession. We love being that sort of knowledge providers. There is a sense of, it's actually quite a pleasant feeling of, being, giving and stuff like that. But at the same time, whilst recognizing that, I also think is also very positive that the role is changing. Yeah. Because I think that the students still benefit from being guided. More than ever, they need our guidance, and the teacher's role as a facilitator is becoming more and more important, because young learners, of course, they can coach each other, but at the same time, this is where their anxiety is, because they might think they know it all, they can do it.
Right.
Deep down, they know they can't. Really.
Right. That's where the teacher's role comes in, as the emotion regulator as well. We know that in AI and modern technologies, there's no emotion. So I think, I believe rather, the teacher's role also comes in when it comes to human interaction. And these students learn social cues, social behaviour, language, facial expressions, and emotion regulation is learned through interaction. So AI and modern technologies cannot give that. No. It's human, that can give that connection, the bonding with the students.
That social interaction, which communication language is all about. Yeah.
And one thing, Olga, another thing, that Generation Alpha works smart, but not hard.
Okay.
That's one thing we cannot forget. They work smart, not hard. They know they have the tools around them.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, I've got all these tools. How can I get to my goal? How can I reach my goal in the fastest, easiest, and most efficient way?
Yeah.
So they use the tools to get there.
And this is where we're struggling in education with generative AI, because that is a tool which can help them get to where they think they need to get to in terms of assignments, etc., but not necessarily where they need to get to in terms of learning and development. So that's one of those struggles that we have. So we've kind of hinted a little bit at some of the challenges to teachers. Can we kind of spell them out a little bit? I'm sure listeners probably have their own list, but what are some of the difficulties?
That generation, one of them is, which we will be discussing later on in more detail, is the short attention span.
Right.
Due to, for example, have TikTok videos being up to 30 seconds and reels, their brains are getting wired, are adapting to short, snippets of videos for that dopamine hit. Even, for example, presenting educators, this is one of the things we'll be discussing later too, presenting in bite-sized chunks of information rather than one whole, due to the short attention span. Lesson distractions in the classroom due to the short attention spans. But there's also cognitive fatigue from Generation Alpha due to the exposure to so much technology. So there's the constant task switching from one thing to another. I'm on my computer, but then I get a message on my mobile, go back to the computer. So that creates cognitive fatigue, and over-reliance on technology as well. So that's another, and that would create brain overstimulation.
Right.
The brain would be overstimulated, which would also create cognitive fatigue. They interact most of the time online, so then they might have poor offline social skills.
Right.
You see, and there comes in emotional dysregulation as well, because as I mentioned before, emotion regulation is learned through interaction, and if there isn't that interaction, then there's going to be, anxiety when they're offline. And there's also the sleep and health issues as well. If they're constantly on their gadgets till late at night, then the sleep cycle, the sleep issues, habits come in.
You don't get the melatonin, I guess.
Yes, that's
that
it.
You need. No, I just wanted to add what from my teaching experience, what is tricky for teachers, I think, is that they're used to instant gratification, instant feedback. It might be tricky to achieve within the classroom.
Yes.
Because when students are busy doing, their task, what they learn for their experience is that whatever they do, there's instant feedback.
Right.
There's instant feedback on whether you did it right or you didn't. Maybe the good thing from this expectation is the fact that they don't take the negative feedback as a something, negative. They just try again. They're naturally doers. So I'll say if it didn't work, I'll try it a different way. So I'm noticing maybe the attitude to say negative feedback, the wrong answer is less dramatic.
Right.
But they see it as a natural thing. They'll just try again. Right. But at the same time, I think for teachers, providing that instant feedback becomes, it's difficult when you have a classroom, obviously. Yeah. So we need to find ways of still giving them feedback within, what's available to us in the classroom when we teach face-to-face especially. Right. Because if we teach online, obviously, and we have kids, obviously you can still use emojis, you can use reactions to praise them and give them some feedback and stuff. Yeah.
That's all really interesting. So one of the questions in my mind when I listen to this is, to some extent, it's not completely new. I think when I was in the classroom a long time ago, children had problems with attention and all those things. So, would you say that this generation is are they really distinct from the previous generation? Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Yeah.
Well, Gen Z were digital pioneers, right? So they had this, they were actually growing up, not really immersed with technology, with learning technology along the way in the teenagers and so on. Yeah. So whilst I think the difference, if we talk about differences, the Gen Alpha are the digital natives. Right. They're native, they're immersed. In technology, you can see actually the videos of babies scrolling the book, trying to work out how to scroll the book, which is so fascinating. It's all intuitive interfaces and gadgets foster this early independence. Yes, I guess. So maybe,
and perhaps this generation is much more in the social media world than the Gen Z.
Whatever you call social media.
As in that very interactive posting, immediate likes, dislike.
What I'm noticing is that what games are popular, what experiences are popular, but not necessarily big games like, say, Worlds in the online world, is this sort of immersive place where you interact, where there are transactions with other children, and I guess that also shapes their expectations and their social skills as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later, how they're not socialized really, but that's I think where the difference is. It's a natural expectation for connectedness, natural expectation for independence.
In fact, to build on what Olga said, Gen Z adapted to the technological world whilst Gen Alpha were immersed. It's their environment. And another difference would be that Gen Z changed from analog to digital, whilst Gen Alpha were immersed into the digital, didn't have to adapt from the analog to the digital.
Yes, I was reading somewhere about the shift, I think from late 80s to 90s into the 90s of from being play-based childhood to phone-based childhood, and I feel there's something related here that the social side of children's development was much more in real life, and it's become more online through smartphones basically.
It transformed in a way.
And can I ask one other question? And that's we're using this kind of big generalization. Everybody born between these years is like this. And of course, individuals are very different on an individual level. But what about across the globe, do you have any sense whether the issues we're talking about here are more than just Western Europe? Are they across the world?
I think it's on a global scale. When I speak to my foreign counterparts in any part of the world, we're always, they mention the same traits that Olga and I presented in our book.
Yes.
So it's on a global scale.
I suppose the factors which are shaping the characteristics are global. So in that sense, it's not surprising that these characteristics should be global.
Yeah, because we are globalized as well.
Yes.
So it would be strange to talk about how our children are not included.
Yes.
Because we are. So will they?
Yeah. I mean, you use the word connectedness. And I think that's so good, because it's partly a kind of technical thing of being connected to technology, the internet, and all sorts of sources of information. But it's also that connectedness to the other parts of the world. So
I remember when we were young, we used to have to wait for a certain time to sit in front of the TV to listen to the news, latest news, to see what's happening around the world.
Yes.
But nowadays, my children, if they want to know a particular, news that's happening on the other side of the world, they just get down to their gadget, just type in what they want to type in, and they have it in front of them. So they have the whole world right in front of them.
And it's an interconnectedness. And what I'm also noticing, which is absolutely fascinating, it sounds like there is less division between what children should be interested in, because at their age, what I mean is that I notice interest in politics, classical music, certain interests that we don't necessarily expect children to be interested in. Now the boundaries are blurring, and you can actually see someone being really interested in what is not really to be a child's interest. I'm not talking about obviously adult content, but I'm talking about things that are traditionally not expected from children, like reading, listening to classical music, or reading classical literature, for example, because that becomes cool.
Yes.
In a way.
How
that is
interesting.
Fascinating.
How interesting. So I think this has been really interesting, really useful. We've got a sense, I think, now of what we're talking about when we're talking about Generation Alpha. I think we're going to wrap up this episode, and then we're going to go on to our next episodes. I think we'll go on to what this actually means in the classroom, what you can do as teachers, etc. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.